Welcome to the channel, Reverend Dr. Jason W. Morrison. Don't practice as a preacher no more. Didn't want to. Got tired of people that were living a good life and just couldn't work it out, to be honest. You get desperate. You get to a point in life where you get desperate. That happened to me probably, I don't know, nearly 10 years ago now. And I was taking life pretty well serious before that, straight, sober, making sure everything, landed where it should, but struggled with relationships, struggled with the people that I was ending up with. Not to be critical, I had to look at myself as well, but everything come back to a lack of resolve. There was no resolve when it really mattered. And you get to the point where you go, no, I can't do this anymore. Where's the resolve? And it wasn't a matter of whether I was better or not than these people. The one thing I knew for sure was if I needed to fix something, I did. I mean, that's what you do if you value a relationship. You listen to what people are saying to you and you fix the problem. But that comes down to value as well, and if value is being lost in the relationship for whatever reason, usually because of some kind of unresolved, then how do you navigate that? Well, what you'll find is some people just aren't going to tell you what the problem is. And if they don't tell you what the problem is, then how are you going to fix it? You're not going to be able to fix it, which means then you've got to shift into spiritual and sensorial senses and listen to what they're telling you. A lot of people claim to be spiritual, but it depends whether it's dark or light spirituality. A lot of people will say ignoring things is being peaceful. That's not necessarily the case. Ignoring things can often cause things to get worse. If you ignore a saw, if you ignore a shark, if you ignore a car coming down the road while you're trying to cross it, that's not going to end well. If you ignore parts in your relationship that need to be resolved, then guess what? That's not going to end well either. And it becomes fucking monotonous, ridiculous. People always start out well. Always, without fail. That's why when you meet someone, you've got to look at the long haul. You don't take notice too much of what's being said in the first 6 months. Limerence, or the honeymoon stage, has a way of making people say anything to keep the fire burning, and then something stupid will happen, like a fucking triangulation or something ridiculous happens, and the next thing, resolve is called for. Well, at the start, when things are going through the teething stage and the values there, people will resolve anything. Wouldn't matter what it was. They'll resolve, even if they have to crawl on their hands and knees. That's how it works at the start of a relationship. And if it's a legitimate problem and not a red flag situation, then great, you work through it. But what do you do if you got a red flag situation jumping out in front of you and you choose to ignore it? Well, I can tell you this, the other person will know. The other person might be trying to get a measure on you, on how weak or strong you are. There's some clever people out there and they'll work out where you're at one way or another. But if it's a problem you haven't caused and something somebody's trying to get you caught up in, then what do? Well, you talk about it and then hopefully it gets resolved. But what if it doesn't get resolved? What if it's a triangulation and the third party is just not going to allow anything to be resolved and the person you're with's deeply connected to that person? And the resolve comes down to an outside person. Then what do? Well, then you've got to ask yourself, in a triangulated situation, is resolve a possibility? And of course, it's always a possibility, but that doesn't mean it's going to be an absolute. Then you got to say to yourself, how long will I give it before I decide this is a stalemate and not worth my effort and time, or their effort and time if you're the problem? Let's face it, there's two sides to every story, and you better make sure your side's 100% on point you better be focused and on point, because if you got delusional drug addicts and people like this running around accusing you of shit, you better make sure you know what's going on, because they'll hang you if they can. Because people, for the most part, don't want other people to succeed. That's just the way it is. People that are failing don't want to be left behind. Particularly if it's a family member and somebody that's been domestically formulated into being the way that they are, and then all of a sudden the leader's changing course. That can cause all sorts of micro-incremental dark triad manifestations. And those manifestations will be aimed at the problem, and the problem will be the relationship. Because if the leader of the tribe or the leader of the codependents is finding a way out, that's going to cause an extraordinary dilemma for the people that are left in, or look like they're going to be left in. The panic, the what's going to happen next, the security, the insecurity that as a result. If the leader goes, then what happens to the followers? Derision. They start to turn on one another. They start to argue. They start to try and control, manipulate. They've got to get the leader back at all costs. How do they do that? Cut off the new supply. Cut off the partner. Cut off the person that's bringing power to the situation, and that's probably you. And this will all be manifesting in front of you, and you'll be saying to yourself, wow, do these people know what they're doing? You can ask the leader even, do these people know what they're doing? I've seen this several times in several different situations where the leader of the tribe, and not male, female leader of the tribe, that's all but got a mustache, or a lot of them do shave, because they have to become masculine, because the men of the tribe have let them down. Then somebody who comes out of a successful tribe comes along, you have no idea of the panic and the derision. There's stories in the Bible where the enemies of Israel turned on themselves in the panic of the battle. They killed themselves. The enemy turns on themselves. And this is what happens, I guarantee you, when the battle's on, when the panic's on and it looks like the leader's going to go, the derision, if you could just be a fly on the wall, you would be shocked at what happens to these people. They will desperately go to all lengths to try and stop the supply, the leader, the one that's domestically formed all of their habits and codependency. If that person looks like they're going to abandon ship, there'll be a mutiny of unproportioned, paramount levels. And the panic, you ever heard of the mutiny on the Bounty? Well, that's a Sunday picnic to what psychologically and mentally and emotionally happens in these families when the single mother, there I said it, finds a partner that looks like it's going to succeed, that looks like somebody she might be able to build a life with. That's just how it works. And I'm telling you, the panic, the enmity, the derision, the psychological assault, the emotional violence that goes on. If you could be a fly on the wall, I'm telling you, the infantile digression in adult behavior down to infantile, it is, honestly, you'd be astounded at what lengths these people will go to pull the person back out of the relationship that they've found. And yet they'll have a relationship themselves. It's absolutely amazing how destructive and how catastrophic this can be. And it's grievous and it's dangerous. And some people get maimed. These people will be physically attacked. I've seen 10-year-olds with their mother being strangled against the wall. I've seen 20-year-olds psychologically abusing their mother in a corner to the point where she's completely had a breakdown. I've seen it with my own two eyes several times. I've seen people above 20-year-old asking their mums for band-aids and fucking headache tablets and shit like this, like little infantile children, to get their attention. And you wonder and you say to yourself, what on earth has been going on here? Not that you actually give her stuff, because it's not your problem. You're just trying to have a relationship, and all this stuff's just manifesting around it. And you need to identify what the hell is going on. I'll tell you what it's going on. It's called covert emotional incest. Oh God. Yep, covert emotional incest. When people panic after a breakdown in a marriage or a parental relationship where children are involved, and the parent turns to the children and puts them in a surrogate situation where they are given the same authority as a parent or a partner, and allowed to operate within the relationship like that, and it just turns on everybody. And then when somebody comes along, be it with the child, the adult child, or the parent, just causes derision, because it's a threat of a loss of psychological and emotional supply. You have to understand how dangerous and destructive this is, just on a normal psychological level. If you add drugs and fucking alcohol and all that other shit with it, you're going next level. You're going deluxe, dysfunction, etc., with all the micro incremental and full dark triad attributes and characteristics that come with that. And when you find yourself on the end of all of this emotional violence and psychological assault and abuse, man, you better be able to discern what's going on, or they'll take you down. And what I mean by that is, if it's a child that's on the assault, the parent won't do anything, and if it's the parent that's on the assault, well, there's nothing the child can do, because by order of authority, the child's just a spectator, which puts the adult in a situation of conflict, because everything comes back to them. And if they've messed up the roles of authority, well, everything caves in. See, single mothers can't be kings. Their highest level of authority is queen. And if the queen gives away her authority to children and there's no king, you've got mutiny. That's all that can happen. And if a man comes into this life of this woman, he can expect enmity from those children, given the authority that they've been given. And when authority's out of order, what follows? Micro-incremental dark triad responses to assaults against that authority. And you'll find not only has the parent been getting abused well before you come along, guess who's next on the list? You. You will fall in line to these assaults and attacks. Emotional and psychological assaults and violences. And a lot of people go, well, this can't be true. You better believe it's true. It's rampant through the single mother communities, because they go surrogate with their children. They shift all the authority around, give children the authority of adults, and they can't pull it back, and the children destroy everything that's going on in their life. Not only in the parents' life, but in their own lives as well. So with that kind of chaos going on, and you walk into that, you can't see it on the surface when you first come along. This all manifests when power shifts start to take place, when supply shifts start to take place, when the mother's supply that was fed to the child starts to shift towards you. You watch. And you watch very carefully, because you are going to be the target. Be it overt or covert, usually covert, they'll be throwing everything at you. If they come out with an overt assault against you and it doesn't come off, they'll go overt, and they'll either, if it's the boyfriend of the child, the parent will hound the child. If it's the boyfriend of the parent or girlfriend of the parent, they'll hound the parent to assault the character and the integrity of the partner that has come into the tribe. Now, how do you deal with this? I'll tell you how you deal with this. First, you've got to understand and accept this is going to happen, right? Without fail, this is going to happen, right? The covert emotional incest, if it's there, and it usually is, will manifest, and it'll manifest against the third person in the wheel, the outsider, because it all runs on DNA. And if you're just walking around blind and pretending this ain't happening or it ain't gonna happen, you are in for a rude collateral emotional shock. And really, what are the strategies for this? The only strategies that you can apply, really, if you want to be successful, is to pull away. First, pull away, if you're an adult, as in my case, from the accuser. Right? If you've had an attempt of resolve and the child's gone into accusing, and you've got no idea how far this can go. I've heard of stories of daughters accusing the mother's boyfriend of sexual assault, and it's not been true. In some cases, yes, it is true, but in some cases it has not been true. And it's ruined these people's lives, all on a falsehood. I've been accused of thinking somebody threatening to commit suicide was some kind of a joke. Little did these stupid people know that I used to be a suicide rehabilitation minister, the stupid idiots. I mean, come on. This is the lengths that they'll go to. And I'm sorry, yeah, people have to take accountability for what they do to other people. Kind of fucking nonsense and shit is that? And they'll try and make you doubt yourself. They'll try and make you believe that you're in on this. You better know who you are and what you stand for, or they will take you down. And they'll take you down without conscience, because they want you out of the tribe. They want you out of the circle so they can get their infantile supply back. From my experience, I've found nothing worse than the mummy's boys. The mummy's boys, and they're out there. You better believe it, because I've seen it on several occasions. And you don't ask for it, you don't encourage it, you try and avoid it, and guess what? No, you ain't avoiding that, because these people know that there's a possibility that mummy might be going somewhere out of their control. And there goes their supply, their security, and their mummy. And I'm talking about adult people that still need their mummy. And if you're coming along as a man that's going to meet this person's needs, right? And that's something that's a strong possibility given a certain amount of time, and these people begin to notice that, and they're reliant on their mummy, guess what? They're going to go into all micro-incremental dark triad forms of behaviour to try and wipe the relationship out. And they won't stop unless the parent, right, the stupid parent, if they've got any brains, stops it in its tracks. And if the parent that you're trying to have a relationship with, listen to me, doesn't want to do anything about it, you've got to get out. Because their values with the dysfunctional child. I've seen these people go, oh, I'm frightened I'm going to lose him. Imagine living on those kind of eggshells. How obvious is that of emotional and manipulational control at its highest level? And you're standing there and you're going, this can't be real. Could this person as a parent be this ignorant? But there's another side to it. The parent loves it because the parent feels like they've got something that's going to keep that child locked into them. Whenever I'm giving this adult person a sense of security, I get a sense of belonging. And we're going to be together for the rest of our lives. That's why their relationships don't work. People won't tolerate it. They don't think anyone notices. But just because they can't see what's going on doesn't mean people that have got their senses about them don't. And they will try to get out of it, but it's almost impossible to undo, because it's a domestic formation and it is harming and maiming. And man, you need to identify what's happened to you. There's people that are sitting out there beleaguered, wondering what happened to me. I'm telling you, I'll give you the answer. It's called covert emotional incest. Whether these people want to accept it or not, it's irrelevant. It's real. It's a dark triad form of attack and assault. It's from the deepest, darkest caverns of fallen human nature. It's taking people out left, right and centre. And the people that are practicing it, after they're finished with you, they're going back into their little caves together and they're licking up the victory. They got free supply. They tried to ruin your life, and a lot of people do get ruined, but not me. You want to get up early to get me, and I tell these young blokes this, because a lot of them are on alcohol and drugs and everything fucking else. The greatest asset you have is the faculties of your mind and your spiritual sensory weapons. And these people won't come near you. They'll try and get you from behind. And then it comes down to how valuable you are to the adult of these children, the person you're trying to have the relationship with. But it's very hard to beat these bonds because it's built on DNA. These people are made up of the same DNA. And unless something really critical and really shocking happens, right, or the person's mature enough to see that this can all work with healthy boundaries and some structure in place, guess who's going to suffer? I'm telling you, every time it'll be the outsider, because these people are domestically formed to be this way. Right? I've heard stories of the next door neighbour done this and that, and we all went out and this and that, and we all ganged up on. It's tribal, it's dysfunctional, it's destructive, and most of these people cannot maintain a relationship. They just can't. And it's sad, but it's real. Covert emotional incest, look it up. It might just set you free. Some of you people have been so fiercely and deviously damaged by it. I'm giving you the answer of what it is. There it is. It's the parent setting up the children as surrogate partners with all the authority that comes with that, all the supply that comes with that, bar sex, in some cases sex as well. They go to jail, those people, when they get caught. And you can't undo it because it's too ingrained into the character and core values of the people that practice it. There's too much security involved. There's too much bond involved. It's the fusion from hell. You're just a sex supply in most cases. The emotional connections with the mother and the child and the mother, or whatever the combinations are within that family. And they're just coming out to get your goodies and then go back home and play mummy, daddy with the child and the children. You have no idea how fierce it is, how real it is, and how destructive it is until you've been on the end of it. And I hope this helps somebody. Reverend Dr. J.W. Morrison out.